let's go Beto. BTO, 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 let's go Beto.
Somewhere? No, not this one. Well, I just want to say thank you to the students. Oh, here we go. Here's Robert. Yay! The host for
Thank you. I'm glad you all came to hear me. I'm really touched. Chris and I moved here to Brentwood a year and a half ago from Los Angeles, Santa Monica area, California. And one of the things that attracted us to New Hampshire is this kind of activity, that you can meet candidates and see people up close and talk to them and hear what they have to say. And in California, if you wanted to do this, you could do it, but you'd have to pay about $25,000. But not here. So let me introduce our local Democratic representative in the State House, Elizabeth Liz turned a Republican seat in Brentwood to the Democrats. And we hope that she's going to be here for a long time.
Thank you, Robert and Crystal, for hosting. This is awesome. You have a beautiful space for us to be doing this. And yes, and my hope is that a lot of you are from Brentwood, because this re-election, as Congressman O'Rourke knows, that all the elections are really tough. This one is going to be tough not only on the presidential side, but on the local side as well. So, vote in Brentwood if you can. That would be awesome. I'm here to say thank you to a couple of other people that are here that are important to us in the state and our local county and communities. Representative Pat Bushwhite from Hampton is here. Pat is also a new representative, so she's my buddy in the State House. We're both newbies, and we're having a great time. Michael Cahill is here. He's a veteran representative from Newmarket, so if we have any questions, we can go to him. He always knows the answers. We have a former Representative Steve Bryan, who is also part of the Executive Committee for the Rockingham County Democrats. And another shout out to another Rockingham County Democrat and the chair of the Senior Caucus, Gary Patton, is here. Also, Kathy Corkley, who is the Executive Director for the Sierra Club, is here visiting us. People from Brentwood and how we did in fact turn this town from red to blue. All of the people here from the Brentwood Democratic Committee, I'd like to give a big shout out to, because we wouldn't be here without all of you. I would I'd still be doing all the work for democratic principles, but I might not be elected if we're not. And so that is, you know, why we're here, because we.
Senator Sherman.
Oh, I didn't know Senator Sherman was here.
He's right here.
Oh, Senator Sherman, I am so sorry. You snuck in and I didn't get to say hello. I didn't even get to kiss him yet. Hello. As Robert said, there is nothing better than being in New Hampshire and getting to hear from all of these candidates. It's an awesome responsibility that we have, but it's also a great treat. So we get to have a huge influence on what we know will be the next Democratic president of the United States. So one of these people are going to be in, and that's what we are fighting for. So on the way home, we listened to, because I have younger daughters, 26 and 22, Anna and Rachel heard, we listened to Pod Save America and the interview that they did with Beto, and he talked about his priorities. And I'm glad that Kathy is here because his number one priority in getting into office, he said, would be the environment. And we know that we need to have attention put on the environment for our next president. We need to talk about it on a regular basis. Not that this heat has anything to do with it right here today, but in general, heat and all of those things, all of those climate change issues are affecting us. So I'm happy that that was one of his priorities, as well as priorities for fair and clean elections. That's hugely important. And the other thing that I thought was interesting, which was he talked about term limits for not only politicians, but also for Supreme Court and things like that. So I just think it's really interesting, and I'm proud and happy to be able to introduce him here and to get ideas from all of the great Democrat candidates we have coming through our state. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Representative McConnell, thank you. And to your daughters, thank you for ensuring that you listen to the podcast and heard why we're running. Thank you for your public service and for taking the time and coming back to be able to introduce me and then hopefully ask questions or share your priorities and urgency on the issues that you're fighting for on behalf of your constituents. I'm struck by the priority on public service in this state. Hard to walk into a Dunkin' Donuts and not meet a state rep or someone's holding some kind of office. I have been a beneficiary of so much of the wisdom and experience and expertise that so many of you have been willing to share with me, and it's made me a much better candidate, and I hope a much better public servant than I otherwise would be. So I want to thank you and the other elected representatives who are here tonight. I know you are incredibly busy and that you're taking some time out to be with us means the world to me. To Bob and Crystal for opening up this gorgeous home in this beautiful neighborhood in this extraordinary part of the country. As we were driving in, Cynthia, who was sitting in the passenger seat while I was driving, said, it's like we just opened up a storybook. And this is an illustration as we walk in. She and I are both from El Paso, Texas. Beautiful in its own right, but in the Chihuahuan Desert, at the foothills of the Rocky Mountains, base elevation of about 4,000 feet, connected to Ciudad Juarez, forming the largest binational community in the Western Hemisphere. 3 million of us in this river valley where the Rio Grande doesn't divide us, it actually joins us and brings us together. But all this green stuff that you all have from my part of the world, and it's a beautiful bookend to our visit. This is our 4th visit to New Hampshire, the last event that we'll be having on this visit. The first one is we were driving into Peterborough, Rob, who's also in the band and is originally from New Hampshire, we had just come out of Friday rush hour traffic in Boston. Somehow we had the genius idea to land at 5 o'clock and make our way into New Hampshire. And you know, we're going through the traffic bumper to bumper. We then get some space on the road. When we get into New Hampshire, rainstorm had just begun to dissipate. And then through the haze that was left over, these sunbeams were shooting through. And Rob said it's like we're driving into heaven. And what made it even better is when we get to Peterborough, there are, I don't know, 150 más o menos people who had come out as part of one of these wonderful Lights for Liberty events. And here they are standing up to be counted to ensure that the rest of America, at least the folks in their community, understand what is being done in our name, and in the name of this country at this moment, to children who are at their most vulnerable, their most defenseless, their most desperate moment in their lives. They've survived a 2,000-mile journey from Honduras or Guatemala or El Salvador, not for kicks, not because they want to, but because it's the only choice that they and their parents had, leaving the deadliest countries on the face of the planet today, seeking shelter and refuge and safety in this country of immigrants and asylum seekers and refugees, only to, in so many instances, find their worst nightmare. You've read the stories. Some of you have actually visited the border to see for yourself, but they're sleeping in cinder block cells on concrete floors under aluminum blankets tonight, separated from their families, strangers in a strange land, not speaking the language, may not even speak Spanish. They may speak an indigenous language in the Northern Triangle countries of Central America. Know not when or if they're going to see their folks or their family again, or what's next for them. And so they just made that 2,000-mile journey, are now in our custody and care. The largest mass incarceration of children who committed no crime in the history of the United States, with perhaps the exception of the internment of Japanese American kids beginning in 1942 under the panic and paranoia of war with Japan. And so those kids who survived that 2,000-mile journey, now imprisoned on U.S. soil, 2,000 miles further into the interior in New Hampshire, you have folks who can see themselves and their kids in those people that we are detaining right now and are standing up for them. And in the face of this injustice and inhumanity, I find our humanity coming together right here in this state. And so I just want to tell you, that was absolutely striking to me. Someone from the border who very often feels that the rest of the country has forgotten us or doesn't understand us or doesn't care about what's going on, to know that people desperately care about what's going on and want to change it. And then just before we came here, we were at a church in Nashua having an immigration town hall or forum on the day that this president has promised to execute a mass roundup of people, again, who committed no crime, who are working the toughest jobs in the United States of America, who may have been here in some cases for decades, raising U.S. citizen children, paying far more into the greatness and success and prosperity of this country than they will ever be able to take out over the course of their lives. Again, New Hampshire standing up to be counted. It's encouraging, makes me hopeful and optimistic. And then on those issues that perhaps are unique to this state or have uniquely affected this state, and where you come up with some of the solutions for these challenges. Someone at the last town hall asked me about student loan debt. And I've learned by listening to you that you have the highest level of student loan indebtedness in the United States. Not the title you sought, but you have it right now and you want to find a way out. And what we've been talking about is first 2 years of college for every American, absolutely free. Earn that associate's degree, get those skills, training, learn that trade or profession to pursue that career to better yourself, your family, your community, your state, and the rest of this country. Make sure that a four-year education is debt-free for lower income and middle income Americans, and debt-free not just for tuition, but for room and board and books, the full cost of the full ride, so that you can afford to better yourself, to better all of us by extension. And then I've been listening to public school educators who've been telling me that it's really hard to work just one job when you're teaching school. Very often you have to work 2 or even 3. In my home state of Texas, half of school teachers are working a second or a third job just to make ends meet. What if we waived all student loan indebtedness for every public educator in America so they can focus on their skills? These are some of the things that we've been talking about and coming up with together. I get asked a lot about the opioid crisis that you perhaps understand better than any other state in America. You have taught me that the vast majority of those at risk for overdose began that journey with a lawfully prescribed medication to which they became addicted. They are not a problem for the criminal justice system. We cannot arrest or incarcerate our way through or out of this challenge. It is a public health opportunity, and those communities that have created these safe stations programs that I've learned about, go into any fire station without any risk or fear of being criminally justice involved, get that overdose medication that will save your life, get on the road to long-term treatments and recovery. That's the way to do this nationally. Stop those drugs like fentanyl coming in through the U.S. mails, through better scanning or at our ports of entry that connect us with Mexico, and then make sure that we invest in the public health that makes long-term recovery available to everyone, and then hold the drug manufacturers, the pharmaceutical corporations, those who marketed these opioids to the prescribers and the doctors accountable, because if you have impunity, then you're guaranteed to continue to have this problem going forward. So I'm grateful for what we've learned on that issue from the people here in New Hampshire on PFAS. You all have given me a lesson in something that I had never heard before I set foot in this state. The firefighting foam that we use on federal military installations, the nonstick coating on the pans that I cook my eggs on, that stuff leaching into your water supply and endangering the public health of this and every single community in this state, not unconnected to the fact that there are water systems all over the United States of America where it is unsafe to drink what comes out of the tap today. We were in Denmark, South Carolina, for example, recently. First time I've been in that part of the state. Learned that it's right next to Sweden, South Carolina, Norway, South Carolina. We think there may have been a Viking invasion in the eastern seaboard. They were treating their water supply with pool cleaner. And so poisoned it, fouled the infrastructure of it. It's going to take $15 million to repair it. They don't have the property tax base to afford that kind of capital project. They're waiting for federal leadership, as they are in Flint, Michigan, as they are in the Central Valley of California, as they are in 50 water systems across the state of Texas alone. This is a public health and infrastructure priority. This is an opportunity for us to live our ideals and our values and be there for one another. The purpose of the federal government in the first place, and you all have given me an education on that as well. And here's my conclusion at the end of all of 4 visits to New Hampshire. All of these challenges before us that I've described, others that are on your mind as well, the fact that we are the wealthiest, the most powerful country on the face of the planet, and we have tens of millions who cannot afford to see a doctor, or the copay on their prescriptions, or the ability to see a mental health care provider. I was telling somebody in Coos County about how in Texas, the largest mental health care provider is the county jail system. And the largest inpatient mental health care facility in a state of 28 million is the Harris County Jail, where we spend $110 a night to keep someone locked up who got arrested on purpose to treat their schizophrenia or their bipolar disorder or their depression. And this gentleman in Coos says, he was a psychiatrist, said, I'm just treating somebody who threw a chair through a window of a restaurant that he was eating in so that he could get the help that he was desperately waiting for. Universal, guaranteed, high-quality health care, primary health care, prescription medication health care, mental health care, every woman and every person, thinking about the transgender community as well, making their own decisions about their own body and having access to the care that makes that possible. I'm confident that we can do that. Following the lead of Representative McConnell and other legislators here who passed paid family leave, only to see it vetoed by the governor of the state. Don't worry, we will have the majority to override that soon. But that's the example for the rest of this country. Imagine not having to work 2 or 3 jobs. You're paid enough to make a living wage. You can take time off to take care of your kiddo or your folks or yourself. You have the funds to pay for childcare because it's now affordable to you, an economy that includes everyone. I'm confident that we can do that as well, as long as we bring everyone in meetings like these, with which you are very familiar, living here in New Hampshire, but doing it all over the country. It doesn't matter, no me importa how red or rural, how blue and urban, we're going to bring everyone in, count nobody out and write nobody off. When we do that, any of these great challenges that we face, including the greatest of all time, which Representative McConnell cited at the outset, the fact that this planet is warming, thanks not to God nor to Mother Nature, but to all of us, our inaction in the face of the facts and the science, to meet climate change in the 10 years, a single decade left to us and the human race, is going to require all of us. No half steps, no half measures, no half the country, no only one political party. Every single one of us doing our part. Then I think the people of the future, looking back on those of us here in 2019 and 2020, are going to be proud of the work that we did, that we defined ourselves not by our ignorance, failing to utter the phrase climate change as our current president does, or our fear that we want to instill in one another about one another, the walls and the cages for kids. We're going to define ourselves by our ambitions, our aspirations, the work, the resolve, the creativity, the inclusion that will be entailed in being able to accomplish every single one of them. That is why and that is how I'm running to serve you as the next president of the United States, and I'm grateful to have the chance to be with you here tonight. Thank you very much. If you've got a question or a comment or a suggestion or an idea, would love to hear from you. Just raise your hand and I'll call on you and we'll bring you into the conversation. Yes, Ruby.
Yes. Thank you. I have to say that I'm blessed. When I graduated from college, my father was an attorney. It cost $6,000. It was very easy for them to pay for it. I have 3 sons in 4 years, which was a huge expense for college. But again, because of the family I come from, when my mother passed away, there was a lot of money, and I thought, you know, this would make Grandma happy if I paid down most of the student loans. And I did, and over time I refinanced, you know, I got rid of all that debt. And I was able to do that. Now, I work at a university, and not only do I work at a university, but I work as the person who sees the money coming in. And what I want to know is, it's disgusting, okay? I have trouble looking at this every day. We have become so corporate in a private university. When I started working there, like 35 years ago, I've been there for 40 years, but like 35 years ago, we'd come to the end of the semester, we barely have money to operate. Now we're sending funds to endowment and doing, and I feel like we really need to hold universities accountable for the money they're spending so that people don't need to go into that kind of debt. And I'm on that end and I see it. That's why I know it's happening and I'm disgusted with it. And I know people hate government regulation and all that stuff, but I just feel like it's way out of control. So I just wondered what you thought about that.
Yeah. I like the idea of supporting every American who wants to go to college or get some kind of higher education, but in part making it conditional on states and private universities ensuring that the cost of inflation is controlled and that they're kicking in their fair share as well. And then also ensuring that we're not just looking at those who choose to go to college and pursue higher education, but those who want to join a union, enter into an apprenticeship, learn a trade or a skill that will allow them to work with dignity for the rest of their lives and command a living wage for the rest of their lives. We're making investments and prioritizing that as well. So yes, let's make an additional investment because it's going to produce a very handsome return. But let's also bring in all the other stakeholders from the states to the universities themselves. And then let's also make sure that we use this as an opportunity to drive more Americans to public service. And I want to just give you one brief example. We were holding a town hall during the Senate race in Texas in a small town in Pecos County called Fort Stockton. It was at a Dickey's barbecue, and Cynthia, 8 or 9 people showed up to that town hall. There was a birthday party going on at the next table that was larger than my town hall. And I remember this woman stood up, and she was very angry with me as a Democrat because of Obamacare. Our state had not expanded Medicaid, and she described a situation where she's working her tail off and earns too much to enroll in Medicaid, does not earn enough to afford private insurance, and is mad at Democrats for messing it up. And I started to talk to her about, well, we could have expanded Medicaid, and that would have taken care of this issue. And she cuts me short before I can finish, and she said, you know, Beto, even if we did that, there's no one in this town that takes Medicaid or Medicare, so I'd be out of luck. And as she says that, this young man stands up. And he says, ma'am, I'm a doctor, and I live in Fort Stockton as well. In fact, I moved back here 8 years ago, and I take Medicare and Medicaid. And even if you don't have insurance, I'd love to take you. And so I pulled him aside afterwards, and I said, you've got to tell me your story. Graduated from high school in Fort Stockton, went to college, could not afford medical school, but Pecos County and the state of Texas, believe it or not, kicked in 50-50 on his medical school education on condition that he moved back to Fort Stockton and practice medicine there for 6 years, take care of those who had ensured his success in the first place. And the kicker is, he was in his 8th year. He satisfied his requirements, but he put down his roots, and that's where he was going to thrive and ensure that that community could thrive. What a great return on the investment that that community made. Let's make that in every American, right? So thanks.
Talking about our salaries and that kind of thing, but as far as I can see, we're a lot more concerned about the trauma and mental health care needs that are not being met in our kids. And I just want to make sure that everyone who comes through knows that, you know, I will keep my salary if I can help the kids in any way that I can. And really, their social emotional needs are just not being met right now. And it's kind of coming into this whole second-degree trauma for educators that's really starting to be concerning for a lot of educators in the state.
Thanks for saying that, and thank you for your public service. I had that in mind when our youngest, who last year was in first grade, came home from school and described the active shooter drill that his first grade teacher led him and his classmates in. Now, she should be focused on, you know, teaching Henry to read or to add or whatever's important for his academic success and success in life. But on top of doing that, on top of, in Texas, teachers on average, out of their own pocket, spend $800 on uncompensated on their kids. And not just the decorations and supplies, but food for that child who's on free and reduced breakfast and lunch but doesn't have a dinner to look forward to. She's going to buy that dinner for that kid. Or clothing. Very often hear about teachers who see the same student in the same set of clothes every single day. And then finally, just out of frustration, buy that kid a new set of clothes and ensure that kid has a better sense of self-worth and dignity and ability to learn. So you just said it, and I hear you, and I see it. You're going to even withstand that lower salary, the high stakes, high pressure standardized tests, as long as your kids are okay. What if we invested in community schools? So the social well-being of those kids, the primary and mental health care needs of those kids, the full nutrition, dinner and then meals over the course of the summer, passing sensible gun legislation so you don't have to fear an active shooter walking in to your classroom, and we don't ask you to arm yourself in defense of those kids for whom you've already sacrificed so much. And then 3 quick ideas. One, I'm hearing from kindergarten teachers that on the first day of kindergarten, the kid's 4 or 5 years old, many of them are already 10 months back in reading comprehension. Not unrelated to the parent who may be working 2 or 3 jobs and doesn't have the luxury of reading to that child before the first day of school. What if we move school back to preschool universally for every American? It's expensive, but it's well worth the investment. 2, if we funded the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, that's $23 billion a year more the federal government should be spending on local school districts. It frees up your school boards to invest in teacher salaries or other deferred maintenance investments that they have been putting off. And then if we set up a permanent education fund at the federal level to meet disparities in school funding. Majority schools in the United States of America are underfunded to the tune of $20 billion a year. Some people have described a de facto segregation in public education greater today than it was in 1954 on the eve of Brown versus Board of Education. So I want to make sure that we address every single aspect of this in policy, in investment, and in making sure that we allow you to follow your calling and teach to those kids. So thank you for doing that. Appreciate it.
Thanks for being here. The policy vision is awesome. You know, I think about that world, and when you see it, it looks like a beautiful place. This president doesn't care about deficits or the problems created by overspending. Last time we had a balanced budget was back in the Clinton days. How do we solve the problem of paying for all this stuff? We all believe it looks like a beautiful world to live in.
Right on. So how do we pay for all this stuff? The policy prescription makes a lot of sense. That would be a beautiful world for us to live in. How in the world could we afford to do that if we are more than $22 trillion in debt and projected to spend in deficit spending $1 trillion to add to that every single year going forward, and it will only increase along this current trajectory? I first begin with how we got there. If at the end of the Clinton administration we had a balanced budget and began to pay down that debt, what changed? 2 unpaid for tax cuts during the George W. Bush administration. Wars that we began in 2001 that we are still fighting today in 2019. Wars actually that we began in 1991. If you want to look at Iraq, where we've been for 28 years and 6 successive presidential administrations straight, $6 trillion to the national debt. A $2 trillion tax cut under this administration inexplicably flows to the wealthiest at the time of record wealth inequality and to corporations who are sitting on record piles of cash, who use the savings not to pay their workers more, but to buy shares back from those who had already invested in the success and were reaping the rewards of those corporations. So we've got to roll back the worst of these tax cuts. For example, take the corporate rate back up to 28%. It was cut down to 21 from 35. You would generate hundreds of billions of dollars over the next 10 years. If you, in addition, were to tax capital at the same rate that you tax ordinary income or wages, you would generate hundreds of billions of dollars. If you ended these wars that we've been in, that have added so many trillions of dollars to the national debt, there would be a dividend that I would first want to invest in veterans, in making sure that we make them whole, given their service and sacrifice to this country. But then there's more than enough left to invest in education and healthcare, in people and communities. And then I hope we all agree, when we make that investment, this economy really begins to hum and work for everyone. And then last point, when we say everyone, we've got to mean everyone. In a country where Hispanic women are paid 53 cents on the dollar for a white man, African American women 61 cents, we've got to end workplace discrimination. We've got to pass and sign the Paycheck Fairness Act, ratify the Equal Rights Amendment so that it's enshrined in our Constitution. Everyone participates, this economy will work for everyone. So thanks for asking. Yeah, appreciate it. Behind me, got it.
So my name is Satchel. I'm 11 years old and I'm from Nashville, Tennessee. But I've had a dream ever since I was a toddler, and that's to become president of the United States. But it feels like the only people that can win an election are from the upper class. So how are you going to make campaigns more affordable?
Yeah. Wow. Satchel, if it were constitutionally permissible, I would love to get out of the way and just allow you to move right in. You've got a real presence about you that leads me to believe that you'll be successful in this quest. And the question you ask gets to the fundamental challenge of this great democracy of ours that has withstood the test of time over the last 243 years, that has become so captured and so corrupted by those who can afford to purchase influence and access and outcomes and elected office. And so how do we change this? we have proposed a bold set of reforms to our democracy. One, bring more voters into the process. So same day and automatic voter registration, so that literally the day that you turn 18, you're just automatically registered to vote, can walk into that ballot box and cast your vote. Make sure that we make Election Day a national holiday, so there are fewer excuses not to vote. Sign into law a new Voting Rights Act. You probably know this, but in states like yours in Tennessee, mine in Texas, we have a long history of keeping people out of the ballot box based on their race and their ethnicity through voter ID laws or voter roll purges. A new Voting Rights Act ensures that everyone has access. End the process of gerrymandering, where members of Congress choose their voters instead of the other way around. And then to your question, get big money out of our politics. No more political action committee contributions to federal office holders, including the president, and then making sure that it's not corporations or special interests or lobbyists who call the tune, but people in meetings like these, direct democracy and direct accountability. It's what I want to do as president, and it's the way that I'm running this campaign. We don't take any PAC money, and as you can tell, we show up everywhere. We were just in Nashville earlier this week, in fact, and had a great time. Listen to some wonderful country music at an event just like this one. So that's the way that we're trying to change it, by walking the talk. And those are some of the things I'd like to do as president to make sure this country's ready for President Satchel. So
I think the Trump and Obanomics complex, you can't just point to one cause and say, like, that's why he won. But it seems to me that a major reason why is that a lot of people in the middle of the country don't really see how globalization can work for them.
yeah.
So how do we convince these people that can make globalization work without just turning the world?
Really good question. Hopefully everyone heard, but folks in the middle of the country who may question whether our engagement with the rest of the globe is in our best interest, is in their best interest. I'll just reflect on a couple of things that I've heard while in Iowa. Met these corn and soybean farmers who've worked their entire lives to actually open up markets in Asia and then specifically in China. To see them close down during this administration and not just make it harder for them to make a profit, but almost jeopardize their ability to pass that farm on to their daughters or to their sons, the next generation. They want to make sure that we have free and fair trade, but they want to make sure that it doesn't come at the price of closing down those markets. So how could we approach this differently? Definitely hold China to account for manipulating the rules of trade, dumping below cost on our economy, changing the value of their currency to favor their exports, but do that with our allies and friends and trading partners. This president has gone it alone. He's set tariffs that have precipitated reciprocal tariffs that have just hammered those farmers in middle America to the point that they're not going to be able to stand it anymore. If we showed up with Canada and Mexico and the European Union, I believe that we could get China to agree to our terms, or at least come to a better compromise than where we are right now. But lastly, and in the spirit of the bigger question you're asking, any trade agreement that we strike in our administration is going to be fair for all involved. And so that means our ability to access those foreign markets, but it also means that labor conditions, human rights conditions, environmental conditions in those countries as well as ours become an enforceable mandate of these agreements. In our sister city of Ciudad Juarez, you have folks who are working at these maquilas or factories who are making 40 or 50 bucks a week. They're shopping in some of the same grocery stores that Amy and I are. Not only is it not right that they can't organize to use the leverage of their value to get higher wages and better working conditions, they also, by extension, put the U.S. worker at a competitive disadvantage. So standing up for better trade deals can make that global economy and our participation in it better for everyone. But listening to people, as we've been doing across the country, and especially in Iowa, and applying what we've heard to those agreements, I think that's the way through to bring more people into this and make sure that they see it in their own best interest as well as their countries. Thanks for asking the question. Sir.
Thank you very much. I'm Eric from Denmark, not the Denmark in South Carolina. I'm very honored to be here today. Let me first say that closely the senatorial race in Texas a year ago. We were very impressed by your campaign and by the results you achieved against all odds. To many of us in Denmark, you represent what is best about America. And then one question, I guess presidentials in 2020 is mainly about domestic issues. However, I should like to ask you how you see the future of U.S.-European relations.
Yeah, thanks for asking the question. This relates to the gentleman's question just asked about how do we see our national interest in our engagement with the rest of the planet. I'd start with one of the most pressing open questions that the people of the world are asking themselves, including here at home right now, which is the future of the world democratic, where we freely choose those who represent us and guide the course and direction of our countries, or is it going to be autocratic, strongmen and dictators like we're seeing rise all over the world, including, unfortunately, in Europe, and dare we say, here in the United States of America. And the president, unique in the history of American presidents, has sided with the strongmen and the dictators and the thugs. We think of Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia, the crown prince, who murdered an American journalist, Khashoggi, with complete impunity, who's bombing Yemen with our complicity and help into the last century, precipitating one of the worst humanitarian crises we've seen since World War II in Europe. Vladimir Putin, who he not only invited to participate in our 2016 election, he called him after the release of the Mueller report and described the findings in that report as a hoax, which is tantamount to giving him a green light to invade our democracy again, to invade yours, because we know that he's not just attacking the US, it's the other Western democracies in Europe as well. Al-Sisi in Egypt, Duterte in the Philippines, the list goes on, and then he's turned his back on the 28 other member countries of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, whose mutual defense clause has only been invoked once in the history of NATO, and it was to come to our defense after we were attacked in 2001. Trump has openly questioned whether there's any more value in that. If that's not an invitation to Russian adventurism and provocation, I do not know what is. And so whether it's in trade, whether it's in mutual defense, whether it's meeting challenges like North Korea or Iran or nuclear proliferation or global warming, we're going to need the help of the rest of the world. So instead of retreating and literally walling ourselves off, we've got to engage again and renew those friendships with our allies, our partners, and our friends, and then meet every single one of those challenges together. I really do believe, and I ask your permission, though you're from Denmark, I really do believe that the United States is the indispensable country. We alone can do what no other country can, convene the other powers of the planet to do what would otherwise be impossible. And we've got to get back to that business again, and I want to in our administration. So thanks for asking the question.
You may have noticed that our country is a bit polarized in politics and geography. What can be done to help those poles to communicate better with each other, to address problems, and kind of go forward?
You know, I think there's this temptation in an age where you can raise so much money to run for office. You have unparalleled means to connect with people directly in their homes, on their phones, on every digital device in front of their face. Whole teams of consultants to come up with messages that have been poll tested and focus group driven. You can almost lose sight of the fact that for as long as there's been democracy on this planet, it's been about what you and I are doing right now, just eyeball to eyeball, connecting, listening to one another. And I don't blame you if you are in a rural county that is traditionally voted Republican, for not even considering Democrats if we don't show up in the first place. In Texas, this campaign you referred to, we went to every one of the 254 counties. We went to one county, King County, not the reddest county in Texas, but the reddest county on planet Earth. They voted for Donald Trump 96% in the last election. But we went to King County, because I bet you agree they're every bit as deserving of being heard, of being respected, of being served, of being fought for, and there's no way I can deliver for them if I have not first shown up to listen to them. And interestingly enough, one of the challenges they raised is you cannot drink the water in King County. They need help. But if I had not shown up, they would not have connected my campaign and our candidacy with their opportunity to work through that challenge. We were talking about going to La Mesa, Texas. We would pronounce it La Mesa in El Paso, but there they say La Mesa, a rural cotton growing town, part of the largest cotton patch on the face of the planet. And we talked about immigration and how under this administration it's so hard to find the workers who will work in that cotton gin or work on that cotton field, and how this Republican farmer, as we're talking to him, said that he challenged all his friends. He said, which of you have had your job taken by an immigrant? And there was silence. And he said, which of your children or your nephews or a distant relation or anyone in your life has had their job stolen by an immigrant? And just the conversation and the dialogue, we found that we were really on the same page about a lot of this stuff. A Republican school teacher who threatened me, she said, if you let Betsy DeVos take my public tax dollars, turn them into a voucher and send them to a private school, that's O'Rourke, mark my words, I will hunt you down. I will get you. But if we had not shown up to Henrietta, Texas, very Republican community, she and I never would have made common cause on the issue of public education. So we got to show up. There's no easy shortcut or way around it. You got to go to middle America. You got to go to rural America. You got to go to big city America. You got to go to all of America if you want to be president of all of America. Okay, thank you. I have time for 2 more questions. Yes, sir, and then we'll take you last.
Perfect. First, thanks for coming. But I know since 2017, there's been a big conversation about executive power. Especially the Trump presidency, and with Donald Trump trying to sidestep Congress for emergency funding to build the wall, and as well as what he's been doing recently with the census, trying to bypass the Supreme Court. What would be your relationship with executive power, and would you ever use executive orders?
Yeah.
What would you do with it?
So to the second question, was, would you ever use executive orders? Yes, I would. Obviously, there's a strong precedent for that. There's a constitutional guarantee that the executive can take action that's not reserved for Congress. But on perhaps the biggest issue of our power as a government and a country, and that's the ability to wage war and to commit the lives of our fellow Americans and to take the lives of others in our names, we've seen power move unconstitutionally to the executive. These wars without end that we've been waging really since 1991, it's hard to make the constitutional case that our authorization for the use of force in Afghanistan in 2001 serves legally our presence in Libya or Yemen or Somalia or Syria tonight, fighting people who may not have been born when that authorization for the use of military force was first passed. I saw the beginning of a hopeful change in this dynamic on Friday when the House of Representatives passed a measure that would prevent Donald Trump from taking us into war in Iran without first getting permission from you through your representatives in Congress. As president, I would honor Article 1 of the Constitution to make sure that war is absolutely the last resort, and you, the American citizen, have the final say through your representatives as to whether or not we're going to go to war. With the obvious exception if we are attacked and we need to, through the executive, respond immediately, of course I would do that as well. On some of these issues like immigration, you can reverse executive orders like what the president has done for Dreamers, make sure that they don't fear deportation, uncage all those kids, reunite all those families, but meaningful immigration reform can only happen through Congress, and we shouldn't try to bypass that through executive order. And it gets to the gentleman's question, you couldn't do that, I don't think, only with the Democratic Party. You're going to have to go make that case in the rest of America that doesn't have Democratic majorities or Democratic representatives, and find whatever the consensus is that allows you to do the most ambitious and yet possible thing on every single one of these issues that we talked about right now. So thanks for asking the question on that one. Appreciate it.
Hi. I work in Medicaid administration in Massachusetts, and they have a phenomenal program. They have especially the fee-for-service program. So I like the Medicare for America thing, but I spent years in fraud, waste, and abuse, and now I'm in a program that I have to admit I have a job because Medicare doesn't know how to do its job. because they mess up so badly, like we audit and find out how they've overcharged people, overcharged states for Medicare buy-in. So I've seen it work really well, and I know the government messes a lot of things up and people want deregulation, but it's a tough question, so I'll just ask quick yes or no. Would you consider turning Medicare into a not only single payer, but single administered and administered by the government program?
I'm gonna have to give you a longer answer. Trying to find a way to do this. So the proposal to ensure that every American is guaranteed world-class care, as we were talking about earlier, involves ensuring that everyone who's not enrolled in any healthcare plan today is immediately enrolled in Medicare. Those who are insufficiently insured, meaning can't afford their copay or their premium or their deductible, they can elect to move into Medicare. And that those who have employer-sponsored insurance or members of unions who tell me that they fought for their health insurance plan, they like it, it works for them and their families, they're able to keep it. So universal, high-quality, guaranteed care, the operative word, because a lot of people have health insurance and are not guaranteed the care because they cannot afford the copay. Guaranteed care while preserving choice is the path that I want to take. To the underlying concern that you raise of waste, fraud, and abuse within that program, I think as that program is enlarged, it adds ever more urgency to making sure that we're husbanding those taxpayer resources as carefully as possible. There are going to be more people who are cared for, more people who are going to be seeing that mental health care provider or going to see that doctor. I want to make sure that we are as effective and as efficient as possible with use of those dollars. Would love to have your help, given what you're working on right now, to guide us in that and others who know what they're doing in this space. But what we have seen is that Medicare, for many of the challenges that it has, is awfully successful. Its overhead rate is about 2%. Private insurers about 15 to 16%. So if we can squeeze that a little bit tighter, get a little bit better care and value for the taxpayer, I'm all about it and would love your help in showing us the way.
Absolutely.
Thanks for asking. Okay, Crystal, Bob, thanks for hosting us all, for coming out here tonight. I was told we could all get in the pool. We've done our job. Really appreciate it. We are going to be outside if anyone would like to come out and say hello. We're following you, Mike? Yes, sir. Okay, right on. Thank you all for having us out.
Excuse me, would you mind? What's that? Thank you so much. I dropped it. And I like your new
Not very close, but you're doing the right thing there.
Excuse me, guys. You mind if I just sneak behind you, just so I can get the live stream?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're online.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Thank you. Yeah, that'd be great.
I need to come in your way. Really appreciate it. Yeah. Stay in touch with us, okay? And
Come back to Nashville, man.
I will.
We missed you, and then we saw it after the fact, and we were going to be up here. So
Right on. I'm so glad that you did. We were at Marathon Music.
Yeah, it's a great spot.
Just
Oh, my
amazing.
goodness. Yeah.
We'll see you down there, okay? Yeah.
Did you read what I wrote to you?
I haven't had a chance to
Okay,
yet. Yeah.
okay. It's about a woman who wanted to get a job at the VA and she had so much difficulty. She was a substance abuse counselor.
Oh, wow. And we need those at the VA.
And she was an honorably discharged soldier, but the paperwork was all messed up, and they made her other paperwork. By the time she was in Massachusetts, in Bedford, VA, by the time it was and she was like a person for like a lot of years, and I just, the reason I wanted to bring it to your attention, I talked to her about it, and you said it's okay.
Yeah, I do all my reading on the flight card, so I'm going to pull that letter out. Yep, absolutely. Thank you. Is her contact info in there?
Just my name.
Okay, but not her, not her.
No,
Okay.
no, because it was
Gotcha.
Thank you for the macaroni.
Were they good?
Yes, thank you. Very fine.
We're going out. I guess we got to cook if we got a sweaty trial. We're going out this way.
Oh, this way.
I know that life.
He woke up halfway through and was like,
Where am I?
need food. And he's like, starts grabbing at the kitchen counter. So this is not our house.
Hey, bud. What's this gonna be?
Say hi.
I like your dragons. Oh, is there a chicken?
Chicken, yeah.
I got a chicken. Look at these.
I have to.
Tell him.
Thank you so much for
Right.
everything.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for being at this. Yeah, appreciate it. Bye, James.
Are we gonna go take a tour?
Adios. Oh my gosh. Hi, buddy. Hey, how are you? Likewise, thanks for being here. Hey. Oh, thanks. Oh, it's really nice of you. Hi. Thanks for being here.
All right, let's go.
Oh, no. Of course not.
All right, everybody, ready? One. Very nice. Thank you.
I will. I'm so excited. And thank you. And we go back to El Paso tomorrow.
Wow.
Yeah, we went to the pool today.
We need those commit to vote cards for house votes.
I got the camera right here. Yes, sir. Ready? There we go.
Thank you. All right, young lady. Y'all all three are coming in.
How are you?
Three.
Hi. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. Are you all home? Oh, you're so good.
Just let me know how many lost them.
Is this yours? Okay.
You good?
I love my
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
Right on.
Yes, this is what this is. Wonderful.
Let's be respectful.
Yes, ma'am. I will get it.
Yes. What's it up for?
Is there ever any? Yeah. No, welcome, guys.
I have to take it.
Yeah, thank you all. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Hello, you have to come to Newmarket.
Okay. You got
Wait a
it.
minute.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right on. Thank you very much.
And you're a representative of our
We'll go right this way. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Doug and Sahan and
Where's Sahan? I have to be with
They're going to make sure that we do it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for being here. We really appreciate it. Absolutely. What's your first name? Got it. Oh, you got it. Thanks for buying the book.
Hi, Congressman. Thanks for coming out today.
Of course. Thank you all. Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
Right on. Thank you.
I really love your students. I wanted to come and talk to you about considering the money that they're getting and the resources that they're not getting, I can't do that right now.
You can't afford it.
I can't afford it, so I was going business first.
Yeah.
So I really love what
Yeah. Thanks for saying that. We're talking to teachers who want to charge, start teaching. We're gonna be there for you. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks. Glad you all came out. Yeah. Thank you. Hey, I love that hat. Spot up. Oh. Good to see you. Thanks for coming out today. Really appreciate y'all being here. Love that hat. Oh my gosh. The flowers make that hat. We gotta start sending that. Yeah, I was gonna say. Thanks. Come on in, y'all. Thanks for joining. Hi. How are you? Hi. Thanks for being here. Hi. Thanks for coming out. Really appreciate it. You're gonna have to bend down and just stand up a little bit. Great city. Yeah. It's a good time. Thank you all. Yeah. Did you all visit on Boston? Okay, right on. We never just got some buses on down from Massachusetts. I've learned from sports team cats. Exactly. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Thanks for asking the question. I really appreciate it. Thank you, man. Where are you from here? Okay. Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah. It is nice. Yeah. Right on. Appreciate y'all being here. Likewise. Nice to see you. Hey, thanks again. Thanks again. Did you have a good time? What do you think of this? Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah. Good luck. Thank you so much. Yeah. Hey. I like that sleepy shirt. How are you? Good to see you. Thanks for taking the time to come here. Thank you, man. Appreciate it. From South Carolina. Hi. Thanks for being here. Good luck. Really appreciate it. Hey, Beto. Bill. Thank you. Yeah. Appreciate y'all being here. Thank you. Nice to see you. Thanks for being here. Athens, please. You're the first Athens. Is that a common name from Greece? Well, thanks for taking the time. Yeah, that was a great meeting. Thank you. Hi. Oh, right on. I'm great. How are you doing? Yeah, I'm so lucky. How'd you enjoy your time? In Texas, you know that we're the largest wind generator in the country. That infrastructure for wind energy was put in place by a Republican governor, George W. Bush, because it's jobs, it's cheaper electricity generation. That's all the jobs connected to every home and building in the state. Right out this way. We have an opportunity, I think, for federal leadership in this stuff because I think, given the fact that you've got 10 years left within this to act, it's really hard to make the case that we should continue to experiment or let each state individually figure this out. There's got to be a national policy with a set cap on emissions for every single sector of the economy, every single part of America. That's what we propose to do. Oh, Will, you got it. Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it. Right on. Thank you. Likewise.
Can I get your contact information?
Yeah. Hey, you were going to give me like a lesson here on Big Bass, I think. Yeah, actually, I got you. Cool. Yeah. And is it helpful for us to bring attention to this, or? Okay. Yeah. That would be great. Yeah. Well, listen, it's just until you bring your presidency, and then yeah. Thank you. Yeah, appreciate the fact that you were here.
Yeah,
Is this, do you want to take a picture?
Sure, yeah.
I think we may have. Really great. Thanks.
I already gave some.
Nice to meet you as well. Thanks for coming.
But I have some for me, like those now.
Yeah. We're going to do. What's that?
Okay, we'll do singles and then we'll use the same color.
Yeah. Yep.
We got some green eyes, we got some blue eyes. I love that. New Hampshire's full of color.
I think so, and the way I look at those 38 out of 20 ones is they've never been really. This last cycle was a midterm. The total turnout that we saw in Texas almost eclipsed a presidential year election turnout level. When you add the intensity, attention that was putting around the presidential year, I think we can go beyond that. Maybe more so in some of these other typical battleground states, with obviously much more to win. So, we wouldn't obviously do anything but compete as hard as we could in Florida and Ohio and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. But I think adding Texas is just critical. So it's really good. Yeah. I appreciate you asking. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for coming out. Really appreciate it. Right on. Absolutely. Where are you going to school? Okay. Staying in the city. I like that. Well, we're going to have your back. Some of those things that I just said, hopefully make it easier financially. Also just to focus on it.
She wants to know about the ice cream later.
Thank you. Yeah. Very grateful. Yeah. Likewise. High five. Beto. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks for coming. Beto. Really appreciate it.
We just graduated high school,
So seriously, spread the word. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Here you go.
Hi. How are you?
Can you say hello?
Nice to meet you as well.
Yeah.
It's going to be good.
Well, thank you so much.
From Massachusetts, right? They're bringing in.
I'm so happy to hear that. We got their vote.
Massachusetts, but hey,
Hey, that's a vote.
you know, more than that, we got a volunteer. That night. From Houston. She worked in the campaign. She's moved to Derry, so she's in New Hampshire.
I can't remember when I was seeing this today, where I was asking
But I told her I was coming. I really said to her, battery just open. So let me forget it. I didn't want it to be lost.
I'll have it right here for you on your way out.
But the story, I think, seems a lot better. We can tell our kids, look, that happened.
All the candidates signed it.
And that's
And then I also have media, other people. And I wasn't going to do it this year. I did that, which is very unfortunate. I just started doing it. But I'm going to do it. I saw he stumbled into the line.
and I appreciate you being here and the faith that you have. And this system and democracy.
We will.
So I want to make the most of it.
What do you say? Thank you.
Goodbye. Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Look how young you are.
Really appreciate that. Make it official.
Very nice.
This one helped very much. Yeah, thank you. Spread the word.
Yeah, we'll spread the word. Thank you. Bye-bye.
They were gonna, take a picture using their phone. Oh yeah, that'd be great. Perfect. Stop them. No, I'm actually here because of my niece who was a gym. Oh, working at campaign.
Really?
Right?
I'm taking a picture with this.
How are y'all doing?
Thank you so much.
Kerry signed. All the other candidates. And I just said, I was going to go anything this year. I said, heck, why not? It's looked over from some other. But it's on here. How is it? Oh, cool. But, who is it? Very quick. So I happened to see Pete Friday. Just stumbled upon.
Oh, really?
In Run. Just
hello.
How y'all doing? That's cool. He wasn't taking questions.
Oh, really?
One day,
I said hello.
I don't know what the question is. You just learn what's on people's mind.
Exactly. I know the reason for it.
There we go.
My hair's probably good.
Perfect.
Perfect. Your fault.
There we go. And she's going to text
Anyway,
it to
she'll
you.
take information. But really appreciate it.
Oh, y'all want to do a group?
I will try to help too.
Thank you. Oh, wants
It's
to
early.
sign
It's
up to
early.
help. Yeah.
It's early.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I would love to get your information.
Sure.
Hi.
You already have one. Somebody else says it.
No. Are you going to work as well?
Unfortunately not.
Nice to meet you, man. Are you also? Okay. So, Connell, after we take the group picture, would you take it? Can I send this back to my email word? What's your middle name? That is so cool.
You home by yourself?
Yeah, Amy, do you mind if I just get this?
I did. No, I
Hey,
did.
let me borrow your phone.
Or did you run out of?
1, 2.
How cool! So nice to meet you. Thanks for coming out to this. You have got to vote for us. How can you not vote for Beto or Krishna or Amy or? All right. Awesome.
They got it.
Thanks for coming out. Really appreciate it. Thank you for being here. Yeah, really appreciate it. Amy, thank you. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Grateful. Okay, that would be awesome. Hi, Beto. Hi. Thanks for coming out. Owen? Owen, Michelle. Yeah, thank you so much. Right on. Thanks. Help us spread the word. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Hello. Good to see you. Thanks for coming out. Yeah, really appreciate it. It's a great energy in that room, so thanks for being part of it.
I gotta ask you,
No way. In DC? And is that where you live now? Okay, so you grew up here? Okay. Yeah, complicated story.
But it's great to see you in person.
And where do you live? In Holland? Wow, just to make it believable. Thank you for the help. Cool. Is this your?
That's my phone.
That's gonna make a great fireplace photo.
Thank you so much for coming to this. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
No.
Thank you so much. Thank you. you all. Good luck. Thank you. Keep the faith.
This might be the easiest way to come out that way. Thank you.
Great question. So you're going to help us, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I hope so.
What were you going in today? Sure with caramel? Yes. I just want to make sure, so the person who's supposed to write out, I would actually like if you had time to talk to her. Great.
I'm going to give you my
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Great.
Thank you so much.
That would be awesome. Thank you. It is great. I get it back. And thanks for wearing the shirt. Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you. Hi, Beto. Nice to meet you. So this is your neighborhood. This is, as you heard me say, Cynthia and Carl, like, this is like a storyboard. It's beautiful. And really good. They sold us stuff. They were telling me it was really good.
And my phone number is actually saved.
Good.
I live in here. My phone number is old from when I lived in Calgary.
Congratulations.
So easy to remember that. I'm sure you guys
Oh, really?
Yeah. That's what you thought the same. I thought you guys were checking the schedule when I couldn't come out.
Yeah. Ben and Will, right?
It just so happens that every time you guys were here tonight, you were supposed to have my cousin's family. I was like, oh, excellent. Thank you. I will. Thank you. I am too. I'll have to tell you. We've already sent him some photographs.
Yeah. All right. So I just, felicidades, congratulations in Spanish. Yeah. Yes. You did. That's so cool. Congratulations to you all. Yeah.
I got 2 minutes.
Yeah, yeah. Nice to meet you. I love your all's neighborhood. Yeah. Yeah. Great work. Yeah, likewise.
Yeah.
Hopefully we get to meet Ben and Will when we're up in New York or when they come back to the city. I'm sure. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks a lot. Yeah. Thank you.
So we're also neighbors. I'm Andre.
Nice to meet you. I love your neighborhood.
Thank you. So, there we go.
Let's take a photo together.
These are our neighbors that have the best cakes, she said, best chicken.
Oh, really? Okay. Good to know for our next visit.
Very pretty.
Thank you so much for being here today. Yeah, appreciate it. The ability for kids and in some cases teachers to know exactly what they will do because they feel it is inevitable. Like the specific steps they'll take. Who were we with last night? Where a child knew that he was going to throw a stapler. Like he's like, I know what my weapon's going to be. It's going to be a stapler. And then another young woman who knew which bookshelf she's going to put it Yeah, it's just life. It shouldn't be. Well, we're going to change it. Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
If I could get your information.
Hey, how are you? Likewise, thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
I like your
Oh, you saw that? People? Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you for saying that. Yeah. Oh, we're going to have a better background.
Yeah.
Yeah, we live here on
Thank you. Thanks for coming out.
No, you guys go first.
I need to buy absolutely.
Oh yeah, it's good. Makes your phone heavy, but it's good.
Hey, treat yourself.
The secret though is getting the Apple laptop charger. System is getting the adapter cable for lightning charges that they can light up.
Yeah.
So my phone built in. It charges the battery countries in the phone for 80%.
Hopefully continue and also in some cases asking for bases.
Like they live the call, shut up.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Get in there, McConnell. We gotta go. People gotta leave. The advanced team can't advance.
I love your questions. Thank you. No?
Protecting the advancing.
Oh, right on.
Liz, get them in the picture. Let's go. Enough of the introductions. This is Big McConnell, Little McConnell, and Other McConnell.
Live free or die.
Hey guys, Beto, could you just crouch a little bit? They're short.
I know.
Beto, could you
No, go ahead.
Girls, can we get up a little bit? Can we get up?
Yeah.
She's very excited.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people are talking about it here, which is great. So it gets on my radar, and so I start talking about it as a national.
So in Rockingham County, every county has a country club, they have jail, they have nursing home, and they also have facilities for training firefighters from all over the county. For zero contamination, they have condo development right next door to them, they're well paid.
Did you guys sign up with an organizer yet? No one sign up with an organizer.
One said that New Hampshire has the highest number of pediatric cancer. And he talked about
Bladder cancer.
No, university.
We're cutting our standards.
CDB? It used to be State University.
yeah, no one calls it arson. Less, so they're cutting what's allowable.
No longer.
The UK's blocked.
Oh, no, it's
Coach is gone.
And pediatric cancer is connected to.
so how long are you leaving today?
That's what's little about SUNY. I don't know if UB is SUNY B. Back in the day, there was a state university in New York. There was like SUNY Buffalo. It is also SUNY Buffalo. But don't call it.
Oh, yeah, no, it's.
Yeah, I think University of Buffalo is better.
And it's still being used, right? The firefighting foam.
So the state of New Hampshire is suing.
Right.
We're suing Saint-Gobain 3M.
That might not be SUNY B. That might be SUNY.
But yes, it is. Now it's
That's SUNY B.
It's not
Yeah, no, of course.
My brother.
We're in fire safety for all of our schools. So, yeah, not flammable.
I graduated. My brother. I went to college.
I mean, I know they do the firefighting stuff in schools or the fire park things to make the kids safe, but nobody died in a fire.
Or the acronym PFAS.
My favorite place is like
So I just want to give that as an example of how much.
yeah, that place is wonderful.
And also connecting it to
I was walking down, so I dropped the bus bar shorts and I
the toxins that you have all over the country that people are struggling with.
Right, because it's not going to be just us.
That's right. Knit it together with everyone else and it becomes a national problem. Well, thanks for taking part of your Sunday to do this. I was so impressed. So thank you so much. Yes. Thank you.
come on in, do a photo with us.
Thanks.
Yeah, we went to college together.
Yo, good to see you.
Come on in, introduce yourself.
We just saw each other right
They wanted to go to college. They all went to college together.
Right on. What was it? Okay, yeah. We just did an event. Oh, really? Yes, 2 months ago, maybe?
Yeah. William and Mary.
Were you at that one?
I was in the Richmond area at that one, and then y'all went. It was a good one, though. I heard. I saw the photos.
Yeah, it was really well attended and like super.
Why would it not be weird?
Good engagement.
What's your logistics? What's that logistics like? Where are we going next? What's the next one?
Thanks, guys.
Must have been a great 4 years.
Thank you.